So we have a pretty unique service for you guys this morning. Last year, the day after Christmas was a Sunday, and everyone else in the whole wide staff of New Wine Church was sick. So on Christmas Day, I found out that I had to figure something out for the next day for our service. And we just ended up just sharing testimonies of what God had done. Tanya came up. Tanya was up here with Jenny this morning, making her second debut as an acoustic worship leader, which is awesome. But she sat on a stool and played some songs, and we just shared in the room stories of what God had done over the last year. And I thought, like, this is so cool. It's so powerful. It's so moving. And for a brief second, I was crazy enough to wonder if we could do it again next year. Would God do enough to fill a whole service? And oh my goodness, I hope you guys are ready to stay here until 5 o'clock because we have so many stories. I'm just kidding. We're going to keep it short. I know we have kids in the room. Everyone, I have a bunch of people coming up to share their testimonies, and they've been practicing keeping it really short and concise, right, guys? Yes. Okay, a few of them are shaking their heads no. It's going to be awesome, though. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Dawn to start heading up here. She's going to share a little bit, but I wanted to share a scripture with you. Why it's important that we share our stories. So this is in 1 Samuel 17:37. And it says, when preparing to fight Goliath, David told King Saul, "The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." So he's remembering, God's already done this in my life. Who knew I could fight a bear and a lion? Oh yeah, God got me through that. This battle, He's going to get me through this one. So it's super important that we share the stories of what God's doing in each of our lives. You guys all have stories. I could call you up here one at a time. I know there's way more stories than we're even representing today. But our stories, our testimonies are so, so powerful in encouraging other people and in waging warfare against the darkness. So Jesus, just have your way here this morning. Let's hear what Dawn has for us today.
Hi, everybody. Oh, those lights are bright. My name is Dawn Evelyn, for those that don't know me. And God has worked. I had this whole thing written out, and then I just threw it in my purse. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to talk. God has worked so many miracles in my life since becoming a Christian, coming back to Christ 9 years ago. From a little girl, wished I could have a family, and I was just never could meet the right man. And when I started going back to church and just meeting a new group of people, and at my lowest of lows in life, I met my love of my life, Thomas Eblin. And he is my rock. God is my rock, but he is right up there. And I always wanted a child. I always wanted children, and I was blessed with my son TJ at 40 years old. And just miracles upon miracles. And that's how God has worked in my life. He's worked through miracles, and just small and large at the same time. I could be here all day, and I know I need to keep this short, but what happened this past year was a difficult time for me professionally. For those that don't know me, I work for the Community Blood Center. We have hosted a blood drive at our previous location, B&B, and I loved what I do. I love being that direct impact on our hospitals. For those that don't give blood, it goes right to our local hospitals. I had a little plug there. But really, I was suffering. Our family needed more financial support. I mean, like a lot of families during the pandemic, and I sought other employment that paid more. Even though I was leaving a job that I loved, I felt like was best for my family. And when I did that, I went to a new job, and just a few months in, I already realized I had made the biggest mistake of my life by leaving, even for just the money. And I was miserable, and I was praying hard about it. And my husband was praying. I sought my small group. Lisa was praying for me. I mean, I was just miserable in what I was doing, and just knew that I had missed the blood center. I missed the impact. I talked to high schools. I talked to many organizations about giving blood. because it goes to our community. And I was about to start, I was quitting that job, and I was going to start a new job after that. And this was back in February through July. So July on a Friday, July 29th actually, I received a call from a coworker saying that my old position opened back up at the Community Blood Center. And this is after many, many hard praying nights of where God wanted me. And I reached out to my director, and I was like, I really love to come back to the blood center. I miss my team. I miss what I do. And she advised me, and while I was optimistic, she advised me I have to go back through the interview process, which was totally fine, but I was supposed to start a job on Monday. So it was either start this new job on Monday, which I wasn't really thrilled about, or take a leap of faith and just have faith that he had a purpose for me, that he had a route for me, and this is God, And so I decided to take that leap of faith, and I was jobless for a good 2 weeks, just going through the interview process at the Community Blood Center. And lo and behold, they gave me my job back with increase in pay. So I was just like, God had just worked that miracle in my life where we needed that financial support. And it is just, that is how God works through me, and I see it, and through prayer and through faith. So thank you very much.
That's so awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Dawn, for sharing. Isn't that cool? So I'm gonna read you one from our friends, the Justices. She said, Megan and Jake, they were building a house up in Lawson. They'd been building a house for like the last 47 years or something. It was taking forever. And, building costs, everything just got really out of hand last year. She said, we went to close on the house after a list of unfortunate events happening every time we turned around. Ready for it to be over, we went in to find out that everything was higher than they'd quoted, including our mortgage. So that's pretty disheartening. A month later, we get a call saying there was yet another mistake and we owed thousands of dollars and had 7 days to come up with it. Jake and I were so discouraged, having gone through this for a year now and thinking it was finally locked in, that mortgage rate, those numbers, everything should be locked. Should be no more surprises. So at small group, we brought up what had been happening and everyone prayed over the situation. I'm in their small group. So she said, Jen specifically prayed the words, feels weird to talk about myself in third person, God, that money just appears from nowhere. You're just praying, things come out. God, just let money appear from nowhere. And that God would just make a way where we had no way anymore. We were at our lowest point. The very next morning, I got a call from the bank saying we owed nothing. And the bank actually owed us money and had a check in the mail. Also, our mortgage was about to drop significantly. She had no explanation, said this has never happened before, but was happy to deliver good news for once. Isn't that incredible? Lisa, you want to come on up? So Lisa's going to come tell us a little bit about this prophetic class. How many of you guys were at the prophetic class that we did a couple months ago? Cool, a handful of you. Should we have another one? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I just didn't want to steal your thunder.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah. So before that, I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to steal Jen's thunder on something, but today is actually a really important day in the life of our church. It is our second birthday. Today is 2 years that we've been our own church. Yeah, so some of us are counting and keeping track, so go Jesus. But okay, yeah, so at the end of September, we had our first prophetic intensive. There were like 25 people that came over the 2 days. And what's cool is not all of them were from our church. So we got to intermingle with other believers and grow in our gifts and hear what God is saying all together. But the thing that I love about the spiritual gifts and the prophetic especially is, God is always speaking. He is always moving. He's always got things on his mind and on his heart for each one of us. And when we come together and we engage in that, for a moment, we all just get to be part of that in a unified way. And it's so cool to see what God did over the 2 days. We had people that had never given or been given a word, up to people who have been walking in the prophetic for a long time. But what I want to tell you is there is no PhD in prophecy. So you never just arrive. Like, the more you do it, the more you want to do it, the more excited you are to do it. So, but I want to share one testimony of that time. So it was a Friday night, Saturday morning, and because of the different levels, and you kind of just want to warm up to it, and you don't want to feel super intimidated or, whatever. We started out, I taught some foundations about scripture, where it is in the Bible, and laid a good foundation. But then in the words of John Wimber, we just wanted to do the stuff. So the rest of it, we really just got in there and did activations. But on Friday night, we started with some pretty simple ones, just to kind of to wade into those waters a little bit. And one of the things that they were asked to do is to ask the Lord a question and then to write it down. Well, the next day, at the end of our day, what we did for our final act of prophecy was, I had the leadership team. There were 4 of us. We all stood up at the front, and then everyone who attended the class came and went from person to person to get a word from them. And it was so cool because I could hear, like, if I was giving a word, she'd say, well, that's just what she said. Or I would hear someone affirming, down the row here. And so it was really cool to hear God just affirming. But this one lady came up to me who did not come to our church. I'd never met her before. And right away, the Lord is speaking to me about, her good, command of the English language, that she is a writer, that she is good at communicating. And I said, I feel like the Lord is saying that he has a book for you, like he's put a book into you. And she kind of looked at me with this stunned face. And I said, does that make sense? And she goes, yeah. She said, last night when I was writing in my journal, I said, Lord, if I'm supposed to write a book, will you affirm it? And so here's someone who'd never met her, who did not know anything about her. You can only come from God, right? We can hear God on our own, but sometimes in our secret places and our desires, we think, is this really God telling me this? Or am I projecting that this is what he's saying because this is really what I want? And listen, if you have a book that you want to write, God will bless that, so write the book, but you don't always need that. But it is just nice to know that, hey, God is in this, and God is with me in this, and he's going to sustain me through this, right? But so I did want to say, Jen said, how many of you would like to have another one? We are currently working on one that will come up sometime in the spring as we flesh out the details of that. Be on the lookout for it, because, again, whether you've ever experienced it or you've been walking with the Lord for a long time and you move in the prophetic, there is something about when we all come together with a heart of expectation to hear God, to see what he's saying, to speak out what he's saying, to see where he's moving, and to come aligned. Because my prayer for this church is that we would be so incredibly prophetic, that we would see in our community, that we would discern what is happening, that we would speak it out. Because when chaos is swirling in the world, the people that are walking with the Lord and hearing him, like Peter, there was a storm swirling all around him, but he's walking on that water. His eyes are focused on Jesus. Chaos does not come near you when you're focused on Jesus. So let us be people focused on Jesus. We don't care about the chaos. We're going to do what God is saying. We're going to move where he's telling us to move, and we're going to bless our communities.
Woo, that was awesome. All right. So I'm going to share a testimony now with you. This is from Melissa. She's my sister-in-law. She's very wordy. I have about 8 pages here. Love you, Melissa. I'm going to summarize a little bit, and I'm going to read a little bit directly. So Melissa had never been to an adult women's retreat. We host a women's retreat each spring. She was strongly encouraged by her sister-in-law and by Jorita, is what I will say. And so she went 2 years ago, and she ended up at a table. We pray over this list of people, and we say, God, we feel like you want these people together and these people together. Well, she ends up at a table with Christina Strickland, who some of you guys might know Christina. She used to go here. Christina is she's a financial advisor and a partner at her firm. Melissa also was on the path of financial advising, and God ordained that meeting. So she was feeling like, okay, hold on, I lost my place. After the retreat, they continued to talk through their conversation. She felt like God was opening up a door, an opportunity for her to change firms. But it was a really terrible time for that to happen in her personal life. Her husband was changing jobs. Her stepdad was battling aggressive cancer. Everything felt really chaotic. And yet, something that Matt had said one time, that pain can bring change, really resonated with her. She then received news that the next level of contract that she had been working for over 2 years was no longer an option. So now, like, bad news on top of bad news. God, what are you doing? She says, I was devastated, but God had just so happened to introduce me to a partner at a different firm who was offering me an opportunity, but this change meant I would have to give up some things that I had built. I was so afraid, and it was so hard to let go, but I just heard, trust me, trust me. So I had breakfast with Christina, and I was honest about all my family stuff and my fears. At the end of our conversation, she said, are you going to keep what you are afraid of losing stop you from seeing what you could be gaining? Message received. So I trusted God that he was leading me in this journey at this new firm. God has been so faithful. I've learned a lot, and I've formed new relationships, and I'm so thankful I trusted him. That's only the first half. Second half. Marketplace Ministries small group opened up. Lisa is leading that. Dawn's in there too. So Melissa joined that. In general, they were learning things. They were praying. They were growing. Melissa says, I was growing in confidence and peace that I didn't really have before. Even the way I talked to clients or potential clients was changing. I felt prompted to pray before my client meetings and for God to give me wisdom of the words they needed to hear. So when the 2022 Women's Retreat came around, shameless plug for the Selah Women's Retreat, I signed up. I was at ease and even brought a friend. The topic was Selah, which means rest, pause, rest in God. And again, the women that we were paired with were awesome, and the retreat again was just what I needed. Right after that retreat, my very first client meeting was with a couple who had been really hesitant to work with a financial advisor, to be able to trust someone in that position for them. The wife saw the bracelet that Melissa had received at the retreat, which happened to have a cross on it. It opened up a conversation about her faith. So because of the fact that I was a Christian and they were Christians, God brought us together and they said, okay, yes, we can trust you to manage our money. So for over a year, God had been growing me, giving me revelation, and even giving me dreams to put on other people's hearts. Specifically with this couple, their financial status is one that they can do a lot of good for God's kingdom. We are even looking at them opening up and funding an orphanage overseas and blessing many different organizations right here in Kansas City. All because I said yes to a retreat that I was hesitant to go, where God connected me to someone who was going to take me to a new place in my career, to saying yes to a small group that helped give me confidence, pray about things, process things in a safe place, to take me back to the retreat for a bracelet, to then meet a couple who God wants to use to do really big things through. And it was all about a yes. I looked back over the past year and a half and see what God has done. I'm so excited about what he's going to do, and I get to be part of a plan that is unfolding that's going to advance his kingdom. Remember, I didn't want to do it. I was hesitant to do it. The reality was it was not easy, and multiple times I was very uncomfortable. I think you guys should be very uncomfortable. The lesson I learned here is that we need to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, because that is where God does the most through us and for us. So if God is asking you to get uncomfortable, or if you have an idea planted in you and you're feeling uncomfortable about it right now, or maybe hesitant to do something about it, it's probably God saying that you should go do whatever it is he's calling you to do. And if you want to join their small group, there is room and you are welcome. Isn't that awesome? I mean... All right, Casey, where are you at? Come on up. So Casey's had a rough year. You're going to tell us a little bit about it, but how you've seen God through it, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Also, we're twinning, so
in
that's
a very
awesome.
Uncomfortable situation. Go Chiefs. Good morning, guys. Good morning. You all are beautiful. Thank you. So I'm really nervous. I don't do a lot of this, so thank you, Rich. When I first put this together, it was like 17 minutes, and Jen was like, no, Casey. So I was like, I'm a Matt, sorry, can't help it. So I'd like to start out by saying, prior to joining this church a few years ago, I was struggling a bit with my faith, with finding a new church home. A couple of friends of mine who have been going here for quite a while invited me here, and I just never left. The connection and passion I felt from all who step on the stage and even the ones who don't was amazing. If it wasn't for everyone here and some dear close friends and family and God, I don't know how I would get through the story I'm about to tell you and how it would end. Sorry, I cried when I read it to myself too. Thank you. Should have grabbed one. So it's not a secret to many people in here that this year has been tough, not only for myself and my family. It's also been tough on keeping my love and connection with Jesus. Early this year, just a week following a visit from my younger brother, Anthony, I got a call from my aunt telling me something happened to him. She wouldn't give me any details right away, but told me I needed to pack a bag. Shortly after that call, while I was throwing who knows what in a bag, because it was like 12 o'clock in the morning, where am I at? I lost my spot. Make this bigger. My phone rang, and it was my older brother calling me. And the second I saw his name on the screen, I knew it wasn't good. Till this day, I can hear the sadness, hurt, plus many more scared emotions from him telling me the most dreadful words I thought I'd ever hear, that I would never hear, that he's gone, that he's never coming back to us. I never thought I'd get a phone call like that telling me my brother took his own life and that he was gone forever. I was so shaken, I didn't know what to do. I felt myself fall to the ground with the loss of words and just broke down. It took all that I could to make a call to get someone to take care of my dogs and finish packing, to start a 3.5-hour drive at 1 a.m. So many things going on through my mind. I just saw him last weekend. Why didn't I see this coming? What could I have done to help change his mind? Why did I finally put a boundary down with my family that my therapist kept telling me that I needed to do for wanting them to take time to come and see me because I needed a sense of importance from them, instead of me constantly feeling like it was one-sided? I felt so much guilt and anger at myself. The same day, while processing the fact that my brother was gone, I found out an uncle of mine was diagnosed with cancer, and it was too far along. And there's nothing that they could do, and it was just only a matter of time. Hearing that news just made me feel numb to emotions, numb to the pain. I started questioning why all this was happening to my family, why God could put me through all this at once. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, after spending a week helping my family plan my brother's funeral, bearing emotions, and trying to keep the peace between my family and sister-in-law, that next weekend I got a phone call from another aunt freaking out because another uncle of mine was on his way to the hospital because he had a stroke. I honestly didn't know how much more I could take. I found myself shutting down and closing people out and honestly ignoring God. My family went through much more loss in the upcoming months. In March, that uncle with cancer passed away. The week of Easter, my grandma was admitted to hospice and passed away Easter Sunday. And the weekend of Mother's Day, the weekend of Mother's Day, I should have reread some of this. A third uncle of mine ended up having to have open heart surgery. By the time all this was over, and I just felt myself going through the motions day to day, I was back at work just burying it all because I felt like that's all I could do. I even felt myself going through the motions when just doing day-to-day tasks, being around friends. I was there, but I wasn't present. I was even starting to feel myself just go through the motions while at church. I was there, but I wasn't there. I couldn't see myself opening up to God or allowing him to guide me through this journey to process and heal through all this trauma and grief I was experiencing. Honestly, I was angry at him. He took so many people away from me in such a short period of time, I couldn't understand why. I was angry that my brother was gone. I was angry there's nothing I could do. I couldn't stop it. I blamed myself for so many things that I had absolutely no control over. I was in such a bad headspace mentally that there were times I was running errands and I told myself, if I could just turn now too early and let this car hit me, because what's the point of living through this pain and hurt? If I did this to myself, it would just go away for me. By the time all of this was happening, the women's retreat was being promoted at church. So another plug, you should really go. I was up in the air about attending because I had been out of town so much, or so busy, that if you're like me and a dog mom, you felt bad for leaving your dogs for another weekend. And no one that I really knew and was comfortable with was able to go. So after some much needed persuasion from Jenny, I signed up because I figured, why not? What would it hurt? If it really came down to it, I could just stay home and not go. No big deal. So the weekend of the retreat, during a small group that I attend, we were sharing about ourselves and what we wanted to get out of the group. And out of nowhere, I just kind of word vomited that I'm struggling. I just feel stuck and lost. I don't know how to navigate this anymore. And I felt like if I could just figure out how to let go some of this, that I was going to continue to spiral into darkness and just hide and let life pass me by. So we're going to fast forward a few days to the Selah Women's Retreat. The first day was full of emotions. Honestly, the whole week was. But it was full of emotions in a good way. When I got there, I was surrounded by a lot of faces that I'd seen but I didn't know. I was also thankful that my dear friend Carly, who wasn't able to join, was able to join us last minute. Because when our wonderful guest speaker got up to tell us her story, within 5 minutes of sharing, I just started sobbing, like ugly crying, kind of like I'm doing right now, but worse. Her words were hitting so hard because I felt like I was hiding in the closet like she was, that I was just hating God, that I was stuck, just not knowing really how to open up, to listen to what he wanted from me, and how to heal. And I'm going to be honest, and she knows this, and she's not here, but she's listening. If it wasn't for Carly being able to join me last minute that first night, I probably would have walked out of that room being so uncomfortable and emotional and not returned the next day out of embarrassment. I thank God to this day because he knew I needed a friend and he knew I couldn't do it alone and showed me I didn't have to. I'm sorry, I think I'm taking a long time. So yes, I showed up the next day. I worshiped, I listened. I opened my mind and heart to really hear what God wanted for me. For some reason, my heart was telling me that someone in that room was suffering from something. I wasn't sure if it was from loss or from hurt or a past experience, but that I needed to share what I was going through and to let them know that they're not alone and together we can make it through anything. So what did I do? What I'm doing now, I got up there and I shared my story. I instantly had regret and anxiety, and I wish I hadn't done it. But as I walked away from that microphone, the love and support I got was tremendous. I felt a sense of relief, a sense of weight slowly falling off my shoulders. In that moment, I knew I was no longer carrying the weight of all the grief and loss alone. That not only God was here, but my sisters in Christ were by my side and carrying some of that weight and support and love and prayers for healing. I knew in that moment that God knew this weekend is what I needed. From that moment on, I told myself I can do this, that we can do this. I just needed to give myself grace and to let go of the things in life that are holding me back and to just make room. That we need to remind ourselves that we deserve grace and to let go and make room for him. That for every step forward I take through this season or even the next, there may or may not be a step or two that throws me back. But together with the help from this amazing church family and God, we can make it through those setbacks because I can make it through it too. Through this experience, I really opened up my heart and my mind and allowed God to guide me through not only this difficult season, but the beautiful seasons that are coming ahead. So whether you're struggling spiritually with your journey or not, I would highly recommend being a part of the annual Women's Retreat. I promise you won't regret it. That also goes for any other events that happen throughout the year, because you never know what God has in store for you or the difference that you can make in someone else's life. I'm truly thankful for each and every woman that was there that weekend and each and every one of you sitting here listening. I'm thankful for everything I was able to learn and experience through him. You never know what God's plans are, And who knows, maybe you can be one of the reasons someone can navigate whatever season they may be going through, whether that's grief, trauma, or some kind of negative past experience. To wrap this up, because many of you know I love to talk, God's journey for me this past season was just to figure out how to let it go and give myself grace. I tell myself every day. By letting go of the things I couldn't control and holding myself back meant I could open my life to Him for love and for healing. So I'm going to ask you to take some time, listen, and open up. What can you let go of this season to make room for Him and grow? Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. Oh gosh, Kim wants it for 1 second.
For those of us that were at the Sala retreat, first off, Casey, thank you for being so raw, so real, and so open. We were all a part of that, and she shared her journey, what went on with her at the retreat. It takes a lot of guts to do that, and just what a great sister in Christ. And I think that's the great thing, is that we need to be able to reveal what we're going through and to help each other get through it. So thank you for letting us at the Sailor Retreat be a part of your life and sharing your story today. And, we got to go on that ride with you, and we grew from it as well. And thank you for being so real.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I'm telling you guys, so many awesome things. So we have Inquis. If you guys want to start heading up, I'll share a quick story about our friend Bev May. Bev, I think you're here today. So glad you're here today. On July 3rd, Bev woke up with a number of strange sensations on the right side of her body. By the next day, she was having difficulty moving her right arm correctly. She couldn't walk straight. She couldn't open her right eye completely. The next day, she was admitted to the hospital and diagnosed with a brain bleed and a stroke, and the symptoms were getting worse. They reached out to the prayer team. Many people started praying here at New Wine Church, at other churches around the city. The radiology department was backed up, and she didn't have the MRI for 10 hours while she waited. Once she did, the MRI showed something that amazed the doctors and nurses. The bleed had stopped on its own, and several hours later, she was sent home with the neurosurgeon saying that it was remarkable. After being told that many people were praying, he said, "Well, that explains it. I'm relieved." Isn't that awesome? Come on up, guys. So this is Dane and Madison. Oh, you didn't bring Nora up with you. Shh. Oh, she's the cutest part, but go ahead, share your story.
I thought I was the cutest part here, but...
Also, Dane is the only guy brave enough to get up here on stage and share a story today.
So Joey just helped me edit this for time, and so there's a lot of stuff I can't say in my notes now. So this is a bit of a sensitive topic, fertility type stuff, family planning. It can be hard, but we've got 2 kids, Tucker, and then Nora's in the nursery. They're both IVF kids. We were really blessed with Tucker. He was one and done, first attempt, successful pregnancy, successful delivery. 4 years old now, almost 5, and so he's been really thriving. Nora continues to be more challenging, but she was more challenging. We had 4 unsuccessful attempts, and then in the midst of that, Madison had to have a procedure for a polyp that had developed, then we had a 5th attempt and successful pregnancy in June of 2021. But I was still super cynical about the whole thing, and so with everything that had been taking forever and going so long, I didn't really engage with the joy of the situation. Madison was a little bit more reserved but hopeful, and had been praying for consolation rather than miracles, and so we were kind of in a bad place. And Madison's going to talk a little bit about what happened.
So at the end of the first trimester, actually on the day I was going to announce my pregnancy to my coworkers, I had a big bleeding episode at the high school where I teach. And I feel like I can't overstate this enough. It was a lot. I passed out multiple times from blood loss, had to be taken in an ambulance to Liberty Hospital. it was very clear what was happening. EMTs, doctors, coworkers, we all realized we're losing Nora. So I don't even know how long we spent in the ER talking about, what this looks like for us moving forward with miscarriage. And I had, they take you back to like an ultrasound room. And so it was just me. And the woman was very kind and soothing and had the screen away from me, but then she was like, I think you're gonna wanna see this. And she was there. It was a complete 180 restoration of hope, among other things. But I think for me, God was pulling back the curtain. Up until this point, I really identify with, there's a father in Mark chapter 9 who asked Jesus for healing for his son. And he says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And God was just saying, look, I am doing it. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. And so I was just 110% in. It was the stark difference from grieving a loss to then being like, oh no, this is a miracle. I'm on board, let's do this. I couldn't wait to get back and tell Dane, and we'd been texting our small group, texting our family and my coworkers, and I told him, I was like, no, God's doing a miracle. Tell people to stop praying for us to feel good and have peace. If they want to pray, they can pray for this miracle because God is going to finish this. He's going to complete this. So that's my biggest takeaway, was it's one thing to intellectually believe that God does miracles. Like if you would have asked me at any point in my life as a Christian, I would have been like, yeah, God works miracles, just not for me, not in my life. I haven't seen him. But he works miracles, of course. But to just experience that power and that greatness, whether or not, you want to dig into the medical explanations or things like that, to me it was that change in heart belief versus head belief. So.
And kind of how I'd mentioned, like I hadn't really engaged with the happiness. It just like broke me down and rebuilt me up. To the point, I think like our marriage even got better because we were talking about things that we'd kind of been avoiding, like the topics like that. And so it really was like the loss was real, but the restoration was real, and the work God did through both of those things was real. And then the last, and this has kind of been a topic, like a thread through all this, is like plug into your support systems. People want to like support you and be with you, but you have to let them know what's going on.
Amen. Thanks, guys. All right. So who do we have next here? Alyssa, if you want to head up here. Real quick while she's walking up, Shelly shared that over the summer they received, she runs a doctor's office, they got a notice of pending litigation, lots of anxiety around that. That was probably going to cost them a lot of money. Then they found out that the claim was not going to be covered by their insurance, which is a big, bad deal in your business. So she was praying specifically, and she was led to Psalm 35:1. Plead my cause, O Lord, with them. Fight against them that fight against me. And with that verse, all of the anxiety melted away, and she felt completely at peace with whatever was going to happen. They ended up hiring another attorney that essentially could have cost them a lot more money, but God just took care of it real quick. They got a letter back that said that the liability carrier, their mind was convinced on their behalf. And so the Lord did indeed plead her cause with the people who had the control over how that was going to work out, and just worked it out real quick and took it right off her lap. She didn't even have to worry about it. Alyssa is going to share about some awesome news. Can I offer you some peanuts, Alyssa?
Absolutely.
I can, because...
Is this on?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alyssa. This is my emotional support Timothy, trademark pending. Scooch, okay, I'm scooching. Jen asked me to come up and speak for a few minutes. I responded with a tentative yes and a probable no, then reminded her of my intense stage fright. A couple days later, I was in my car and planned on texting Jen when I got home with a definite no to coming up here and embarrassing myself. Next thing I know, my Spotify playlist stops working in my car speakers, which makes me turn on the radio, which happened to be playing a song saying, "I lay all my fears at your feet." And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you, I'm here. So anyway, my story is about physical healing and family restoration. For many years, I had anaphylactic food allergies to gluten and peanuts, plus a bad shellfish allergy, and I had no contact or relationship with my family at all. In 2019, Jenny Tran visited me with a gluten-free cheeseburger pizza from Minsky's. This is where I give you a shameless plug for cheeseburger pizza from Minsky's. So, anyway, Jenny and I talked about a lot of things, but we mostly discussed my family situation. My family relationship was very unhealthy for a very long time. When I was 20, I realized very abruptly that my mom was an alcoholic and had very serious mental, emotional, and behavioral health problems. I witnessed many incidents that involved drug and alcohol abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and even self-harm with more than a few suicide attempts. Needless to say, it was very traumatic. Eventually, I was forced to make the difficult decision to go no contact and cut my mom out of my life entirely. With that choice, I also lost my relationships with most of my family, including my dad. I even had court dates and attempts to get a restraining order. That's how unhealthy and toxic things had become. Even though being separated from my family was incredibly painful, I knew in my heart it was the right choice. I knew we all needed to heal on our own. I had described my family situation to other people as two parts, the before and the after, and told them that even if my family was reunited and whole again, it would never be as it was before. It would never be a good and healthy relationship with my family. Jenny prayed over me in general and also prayed specifically for my family that there would be healing and restoration. 1 week later, I realized by accident that my anaphylactic gluten allergy magically disappeared. I joked, as I do, that Jenny needed to work on my peanut allergy next. Fast forward a few years, things both allergy and family went on much the same until the very beginning of 2021. My grandpa, my mom's dad, was very sick and suddenly admitted to the hospital ICU. My dad called to let me know, but due to hospital regulations, no one knew anything more than that. The hospital was only allowing one visitor at a time, and that person was my mom. I didn't think about it long before I braced myself and dialed my mom's cell phone number. I knew she was the only person I could get accurate and updated information from. Through her, I was able to talk to my papa on the phone for the last time. Through that experience, I was thrown back into my family's life beyond anyone's wildest expectations. But the even crazier thing was that I had the absolute best and healthiest relationship with both of my parents, together and individually, that I ever had before. There was no sense of impending doom. I didn't feel like I was constantly looking over my shoulder or preparing for the worst like I was before. It was so effortless and easy. We talked about hard things and messy things and happy things and fun things. No topic was off limits. I talked to my parents every single day. We had an ongoing family group chat. When something happened, we talked about it, and we really talked about it, and it was so wonderful. It could only have been a God thing. Only God could have made that restoration happen so naturally and so organically and so completely. This year, my parents and I had planned a family vacation to an island on the East Coast. My mom wanted to know if I still had my shellfish allergy before we traveled. I shrugged and asked my allergist to retest my allergies ahead of our trip in May. They did a blood test in April on all of my food allergies they had on file. My results came back with 0 food allergies. So Previously, I couldn't be in a room with peanut dust. I couldn't eat anything that didn't specifically say made in a peanut and gluten-free facility or, somehow was labeled Alyssa can eat. But now I'm enjoying all the gluten and peanuts and shellfish, just usually not together. After Mother's Day weekend, we learned that my mom only had a few weeks left on Earth. She went to heaven on June 3rd, less than a week after we got home from that family vacation, our last family vacation after a very long battle with cancer. I miss her more than I can say, and grief has been difficult and challenging to say the least. Even though I will always wish I had more time with her, I don't regret our time apart. God knew what each of us needed. He knew that we needed to heal, and I know he had a plan to restore and heal things. And I just want to encourage you that no matter how big or how insignificant a problem or situation seems to us, God can handle it, and he wants us to bring it to him, and he can take care of it all. We just need to entrust it to him.
Awesome. Good job, emotional support, Tim. Thank you, Alyssa. Man, God is just working so many things all the time, you guys. So many things. In fact, we have Jovi, who is part of our church, at about 1 year old. She had an anaphylactic reaction to peanut butter or peanuts of some sort. Terrified her parents. They're on high alert. All this horrible stuff can happen to her. And when she went and got tested in 2021, her allergy numbers were 5.89. I don't know what allergy numbers mean, but apparently that's like definite. Do not eat that. It is very, very dangerous for you. And then she came up and got prayer one morning during church. And when they went back again a few weeks ago, her mom couldn't wait to come back and tell us that her numbers are down to 1.4. And next year they'll probably introduce peanut butter. Isn't that incredible? So God's doing some allergy healings. All right, I'm going to skip over this next part with time in mind. Amy and Joe Rita, if you guys want to start heading up here, I'm going to share from Leslie. So Leslie was supposed to be here, but she is sick today. And so I'm going to read her story to you real quick. She said, I was asked to share about my experience at a Turning Point. We partnered with them for Christmas this year. They serve the homeless community here in Kansas City. As I prayed over what God wanted to say, I felt it was important to start by saying that a lot of 2022 was extremely hard for me, probably the hardest year I've ever had. My family had a traumatic loss of my niece. I was lost in my personal life, uncertain of how God wanted to use me and where he wanted me to be. I was questioning my ability because of my past, a testimony meant for another time. The enemy was quickly using the trauma of losing my niece to cause me to question God's hand in my life. I was comfortable in a small church filled with people I've known for years when I felt the pull of God to come to New Wine Church. I've known the Slocums for about 10 years, and though excited to be in ministry with them again, I was stepping into a very uncomfortable place. I began to serve on the prayer team and in youth again, which was so exciting for me because I have such a heart for both of those things, but also it was scary. Even with the doubts, I stepped into the uncomfortable. That's a theme for today. And learned something I've learned so many times before. It's not about me and what I've come from or what demons I've had to face. It's about him and who I am in him. The more I stepped out into what made me uncomfortable, the more God showed up in power and in miracles. Which brings me to a turning point. I served in the guest house and fell in love with the homeless people coming in. God gave me a heart for them instantly, and I prayed for his eyes on their lives, which he was so good to give me. I decided to start serving in their ministry where they feed the homeless. The first time deciding to do this, Jen came up to me. Here I am talking about myself in the third person again. And said that came up to me that morning to say, I feel the presence of the Lord in a way where it just hit me as you walked by. So whatever the Lord asks you to do, do it. That's what I said to her. She literally walked by and I had my arms up in worship, like praise, and my arm like dropped to my side as she walked by. And I was like, what is that? So weird. So I was thinking, what presence is so heavy on me? What have I done to have that? Yet again, nothing. He just wanted my yes and was about to use me to speak to his people. When I got there that afternoon to serve, I felt that presence significantly and just began to love on his people. This woman came up who I could tell was definitely on something, but the Lord quickly gave me eyes for her and just began to speak about her to me. I knew I had to go up to her and pray for her. I was hesitant at first, but asked God to give me opportunity where we were alone. Then I would know this isn't just me, but it's him. And wouldn't you know it, he gave me the perfect moment where I was able to speak into her life without making a scene and not even closing our eyes to pray, just say what God had laid on my heart to tell her. I'd gotten a bracelet that morning from the pop-up shop at church that said hope, and I knew it was meant for her. I haven't seen her since, and I don't know the significance of what I said, but God knows. He used me, gave me a presence of him to carry so I can change the atmosphere around me, and gave me words to speak, all to draw his people near. He wants to use each and every one of us, and all we have to do is say yes. He always shows up and equips us. He wants to use all of us to speak into the lives of our brothers and sisters. And even more so, he wants to use us to speak to the lost. This became so evident that day to me and continues to be more evident as I seek him and as I continue to serve in ways I never thought I was capable of. Isn't that awesome? Come on up, girls. All right, so Amy is going to share what God's been doing in her life, and then Joe Rita is going to wrap it up for us with a little bit more.
Okay. This is very uncomfortable for me. So I think God has put me in uncomfortable positions this year. He's been working in my life in multiple ways. Earlier this year, I was encouraged to pray for a coworker, and praying in front of people and over people in person is uncomfortable for me. But he pushed me to do it, and we actually asked the whole group in our department to lay hands on one of our coworkers who she was expecting, and there was some health issues going on. So we prayed over her, and a few months later, she delivered her baby boy early, and he is striving today. And another thing he's done for me this year is he's reopened doors in my career. 3 or 4 years ago, I had a job opportunity, and at the time, my current employer was getting bought out. So I had a decision at that time to decide if I was going to stay or leave, and I decided to stay. And then a year went by, and my boss at the time decided he was going to leave and go somewhere else. And then that same door opened again, and I turned him down a second time. And then during this past summer, they reached out to me again, and I'd already switched jobs 2 times in this amount of time, and I had just started I actually left the company that bought us out. I left them and followed my boss, but then my other boss, the bank that before it was bought out, she called me back and said they had an opening at that company that had previously bought us out. So I went back, and literally 2 weeks later, this company that had been trying to get me 3 years ago reached out to me again. Initially, I turned them down because the role was a position that I had never done before, and I didn't think that my personality type was cut out for that. A few weeks went by after I initially turned it down a 3rd time, and I was like, I probably should have taken that. So I decided to reach back out to see if it was still available. And it was, and they said their offer still stood, and I'm now working for them, and I feel like I've been there forever. So it's been a great change. It's pushed me to do new things that are uncomfortable for me. So it's definitely a growing experience. The other thing that he has done for me this year is I've suffered anxiety and panic attacks ever since my daughter was born. And it was to the point where just going out and about, just even being here at church, I would be anxious for at least a good 30 minutes until I knew my surroundings was going to be okay. I had a fear of dying and leaving my children early, and I didn't want that to happen. And a few years ago, I did the Oaks class through Vineyard, and I feel like that's when my healing started to begin. And then I know Jarita had prayed for me in previous years, and then this past summer at the Selah retreat, everyone needs to sign up for the Selah retreat this year. At the end of the retreat, for whatever reason, I got really anxious, started not feeling well. Jen pulled me to the side and said, Jarita and I are going to pray for you. And they just spoke God's words. They cast out the enemy's lies. And I instantly felt a weight lifted off my shoulder. A couple weeks went by. We went on vacation, and I still kind of felt anxious. And then in June, our small group gathered at Jarita's, and the whole group laid their hands on me, again, spoke God's words. And ever since that day, I can now go places and not feel anxious or like something's going to happen, not looking for that escape room or running to the restroom because I feel super anxious. So I really, truly feel that God has healed me. It's taken time. So if you're somebody that struggles with anxiety or even depression, I encourage you to just get in God's word, and there is hope for you. And I think that there will be healing for you as well. And that also led me to get rebaptized this summer. I was baptized as a baby, so I didn't really have, that connection. And I really felt like at that time I needed to be rebaptized. And then also I had an encounter at worship night. I'm one that I want to hear from God so badly, but I think I try too hard. And while I was worshiping, I just felt like somebody was whispering my name. And I said, God, if this is you, give me a sign so I know it's you. And it wasn't minutes later, Jen got on the stage and had a word for someone who had, and she said that this word was for somebody that had changed clothes before they came tonight. And I like, yep, that was me. Might have been other people too, but I definitely felt like that was my sign from God, that was him. Like he was connecting with me. And I think her word was that it doesn't matter what I look like or how I act, that he accepts me the way I am. So through all of this, I feel like even I think Jarita has prayed over me too, but I really feel a calling for the prophetic word. So I'm excited to learn more about the prophetic word. And he's just given me peace this year and to embrace the uncomfortable.
Okay. Well, I want to share about some things I saw and experienced when we had our first worship night here. I witnessed some experiencing total abandonment to the Lord by coming to the front, lying prostrate before Him, bowing, kneeling. I saw weeping, crying out, dancing, shouting, no one concerned about what anyone thought, just hearts completely open to Him and just worshiping their King. Prophetic words were being given. which impacted people greatly. Many had said that Matt's word, Jen's word, was directly to them. The prophetic is such a huge part of ministering in his presence. I don't ever recall a service where the Spirit is moving mightily when the prophetic isn't flowing. It's God's way of saying, I see you, I know you, I love you. And so I'm excited that our church is embracing the prophetic. Personally, that night, I experienced the tangible, weighty presence of Jesus more than I ever have in our church. My hands were vibrating like electricity was flowing through them. I've experienced that several times in conferences or healing meetings where the Spirit was moving mightily. Eventually, I just had to sit down because I could no longer stand. I heard him, I just kept hearing him ministering to my heart that he was doing a healing work in my physical body. And since that time, I have seen a significant improvement in a chronic condition that I've been dealing with. As I was leaving, I was sharing with Amy what I experienced. She told me that she felt that same weighty heaviness in her hands. She also said she kept hearing like a wind blowing behind her, like someone was breathing heavy behind her, and she looked around and there was no one near her. She'd never experienced this before. So it was a powerful moment for her when I assured her that this is definitely what can happen when God shows up in a mighty way. I mean, I know these things are hard to wrap our mind around, but God can do whatever he wants. Just because we don't understand it, it's not to say it's not God. I also want to interject here. We don't have to feel him tangibly in our physical body to know that he's with us. I don't look for those signs or manifestations. I look for Jesus. And I don't feel him tangibly every time that I'm in his presence. What I sensed and heard from the Holy Spirit that night about what he was doing, that things were opening up in the Spirit, new territory and expanses that we haven't seen before as a church. It all has to do with his presence. He's causing us to have a greater awareness of his presence, which in turn will cause us to love his presence and to honor his presence. You know, some things can only be done in his presence. No amount of counseling, no amount of study, personal ministry can do what he can do in a moment in his presence. I mean, I'm for all those things. I believe in those things. They're very important. But everything centers around his presence for me. It's vital. Most of my healing has come just sitting at his feet and letting him do a work in my heart. As I was pondering this, I felt like I have a word from the Lord for our church. And I'm just going to read it so I'll get it all accurate. He said, "Tell my people I want them to come to me. I'm waiting and longing to move in their life, to show them my goodness. Tell my people to slow down, to quiet their minds, and to set things aside that are pulling them away from me." We all have propensities to certain things. It doesn't matter what it is, he's asking for it. I just want to share, this isn't anything on my notes, I'm going to make it really quick. But I am so excited what I've seen happen in our church in the 2 years that I've been here. I mean, I've seen us go from being very structured, organized, regimented. This is the schedule, we won't veer at all, to a church that is just so open to Holy Spirit doing whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, however he wants to do it. And that's what he wants, and that's what's going to make an impact in us so that we can go out and make an impact in our community. That's kingdom. That's what we're here for. So, praise God.
All right, would you guys go ahead and stand with us for worship? The last thing I want to share with you, there's a friend of mine was praying about what God's going to do in the church next year, what he's saying about 2023 for New Wine Church. And she said, make sure your shoes are tied. Nothing to trip over. There's places to go. There's things to do, and God's ready to do them. So let's just give him all the praise and glory today for the stories that we've heard, for the stories that you guys are carrying in your hearts that need to be shared too. God, we just give all of those over to you, Lord. We say that we know that all of it is by your hand. We know it is all for your glory. And Lord, we are so honored that you have entrusted us with these stories. So God, I just pray over the people in this room that you put us in places, Lord, where those stories need to be shared and spoken out, Lord. And that in doing that, you just pour out this spirit of boldness over your people, God, to speak the things that you have been doing, to speak them boldly and profoundly, Lord, that pushes back darkness in this world, Lord, as your glory goes forth. We love you, Lord, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Debbie doesn't usually come here, and God sent her here today and even prepped her with something to share ahead of time.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm privileged to stand up here and speak to you. I want you all to know that my spiritual walk after 40 years began at the Brighton campus. I went to the Brighton campus in 2009 just because there was a sign outside that said Vineyard Church, and we had just moved over by the Vineyard campus. And so I attended, and y'all are talking about, I've heard people say, when your heart's busted open and the Holy Spirit comes in. Well, I'm going to tell you, the second week I was there, oh my gosh, the worship team was up, so I relate really well to music, and they sang their version of Amazing Grace, and 1,000 years, well, oh my soul, and I'm standing in this very crowded theater, and it's as if no one else was in there. It was me cracking open my heart, spilled out that very moment on that very day, because that little sign was on the side of the street where we just built a house. And I'm telling you, we tried to buy the house there, and it's off North Brighton, and it was okay, 2008, that was a bad year to buy a house. But anyway, my heart spilled open, and I immediately, and this was in October, I was baptized in December of 2009. First of all, I found out from the pastor that was there that I couldn't have my baptism at the movie theater. They didn't have, so I had to go to the big church up off 169, and I said, I don't think I can do this because I have anxiety, and I don't get up in front of people. I can't speak in front of people, and he said, I'll be there for you. So I went up there and I was baptized in 2009. Fast forward, learn how to speak in front of people. God opens my heart, busts me open. And there still was something wrong because I've helped in Oaks of Righteousness before, and I've taught forgiveness. And my mom died November 1st of this year. I lived in an abusive home. My mom was very mentally ill, and I have PTSD and severe anxiety. And there's a lot of things that went on. It's too short. We don't want to go into that. But I hadn't spoke to my mom for a year because of some awful things she had said and the abuse. So my sister said, Mom's almost about ready to die on November 1st. And she said, I wish you would come. And her brother had even occurred, my mom's brother said, you gotta go. You're gonna regret this. And so it was like 8:30 at night, and I thought, I wonder if the hospice is still open. So I went, and the room was filled with people who hadn't seen each other, who were offering forgiveness because there's a lot of dysfunction in our family. And so God says, go right up by that bed, turn on your iPhone, play a song for your mom because she can hear it. And so I went up and I laid my head beside her, and she weighed 90 pounds and she was small and gray. And there was a folk song and I played it by her head. And I said, God, please let her hear it because I need to tell her I forgive her. And so, I won't tell you, she didn't open her eyes, but I know she was there. And through all my walk, through all my teachings of people about forgiveness, I was stuck in unforgiveness and pride. So I lay down on the bed, on the side of her, and put my head on the pillow. And I rubbed her back, and my other sister was rubbing her hair, and we both had been through so much, me and my sister. And I forgave my mom. And she passed away the next day. And praise God for putting people in my life that encouraged me not to forgive, that my journey wasn't over, that I wasn't. And you know what? When you're a child of God, finally, in your heart ahead, you realize that you are worthy, that you still have flaws, but He doesn't care. I had the spirit of pride and unforgiveness, and I just want y'all to know that it's never too late. I'm 67 years old, and I receive full forgiveness. And so be ready to receive that cracking open in your heart wherever you are. And it's awesome. Thank you guys for listening to me.
Yeah.